necessary infusion, the RBI's long-term currency swap was likely forced by the financial volatility. The RBI's recent decision to inject additional $10 billion into the financial system through a dollar rupee swap auction is a timely measure aimed at addressing long term liquidity concerns among domestic lenders. These concerns stem from the flight of foreign capital from stock markets as investors seek better returns in the United States amid President Donald Trump's proposed corporate tax cuts and ongoing tariff wars, which have strengthened the US dollar against global currencies. This marks a second such rupee infusion in less than a month. However, unlike the first tranche of $5 billion on January 31, which had a 6-month tenure, the latest auction has a 3-year duration. The combined effect of these two auctions will inject approximately $1.3 trillion into the banking system as lenders deposit their dollar reserves with the RBI in exchange for rupees at a predetermined buyback premium. Currency swaps are among the tools central banks deploy during periods of high volatility in the global financial system. These measures have the primary aim of stabilizing the local currency, mitigating liquidity constraints in the domestic financial system, and curbing inflationary pressures. Economists estimate that an additional $5 billion infusion may be necessary to neutralize the $1.7 trillion liquidity deficit in India's banking system as of February 2025. This is the second time that the RBI has conducted a long duration currency swap. The first was conducted in 2019 in response to global financial volatility during Mr. Trump's first term. Amid trade, tariff tensions, and tax cuts. However, unlike 2019, when India's foreign exchange reserves were rising, ensuring dollar availability while rupee liquidity remained constrained. Today's situation is more challenging. Between October 24 and February 25, the rupee has depreciated approximately 3.3% against the dollar, breaching the 85 per dollar mark on December 19, 2024. Foreign portfolio investors and foreign institutional investors have also withdrawn roughly $31 billion from the Indian equity markets since December 24. RBI has sold an estimated 111 billion dollars to stabilize the rupee. Given these conditions, the latest long-term currency swap appears to be necessary rather than a proactive measure. Indian banks must capitalize on this liquidity infusion by continuing to extend credit, ensuring that the cycle of capital investment, employment generation, wage growth, and consumer demand remains intact. This in turn could help propel India's real GDP growth beyond the current 6.4% despite prevailing global economic headwinds. India's response to tainted aid must be rooted in policy, not rhetoric. The controversy over US aid's presence in India reflects an increasingly unhinged public discourse undermining the nation's confidence and global standing. The BJP and the Congress have been engaged in the political tug of war, attempting to corner each other over US aid funded projects and the foreign connections. However, much of this cacophony that passes through for the debate is fueled by misinformation and misinterpretation, often drawing from insulations made by the Trump administration, which views international aid as a waste of American resources. While the US may have its reasons to reassess aid priorities, it is regrettable that India's major political parties are echoing these arguments without a nuanced understanding. USAID has long supported projects in India, including those in partnership with the government. In the absence of verifiable data on the extent and impact of these initiatives, discussions are bound to be ill informed and prejudiced. In a globalized world where countries compete for capital, technology, and talent for across borders, branding political opponents as foreign agents may be an easy propaganda tactic but poisons the domestic political environment and weakens India's aspirations to emerge as a global power. It is true that foreign aid can be a tool of soft power, often used by stronger nations to exert influence over domestic affairs of other countries. However, recognizing this reality requires A responsible and measured approach and not an overreaction that borders self sabotage. India itself has evolved into an aid provider, a role it seeks to expand. According to an ORF analysis since 2000, the Ministry of External Affairs has overseen personal financial assistance exceeding $48 billion to over 65 countries through grants, lines of credit, and capacity building programs. This growing role as a donor nation, he coincided with stricter regulations on foreign contributions within India. However, these regulations have been heavily politicized. Entities aligned with the ruling establishments often face fewer hurdles, while others, even those engaged in purely apolitical activities, encounter significant restrictions. American debate over USAID's role in India does raise concerns about foreign influence, but any response must be rooted in clear headed policy rather than reactionary rhetoric. If the government genuinely suspects the foreign funding is shaping India's political landscape in undesirable ways, it must approach the issue with transparency and a well defined plan for investigation. Managing national security in an era of increasing global interconnectedness on transnational challenges is a complex task, one that requires a mature strategic outlook rather than a chaotic, polarized public discourse. The political furor over US President Donald Trump's claim on USAID funds seems to be growing. It is an old American trait to be poking its nose in another country's affairs. Mr. Trump needs to get to the bottom of the issue and expose who the beneficiaries of the $21 million fund are. Beating the same drum every day does not help anybody. There has to be transparent investigation as well as irrefutable proof. It is a mystery why the US was interested in voter turnout in India, and that there was some mark for this, as the issue is very serious and has seen Mr. Trump going at it hammer and tongs. There need to be proper investigation. The said amount is huge and embarrassing as far as India is concerned. It must clear the air. It is alarming that there are external forces meddling in the internal affairs of the subcontinent. It does not seem to be hearsay but possible fact, as the US President himself says so. Whether the funds were meant for India or Bangladesh, such foreign interventions could upset bilateral relationships in the region. Perhaps India needs to reach out to regional leaders and ensure that democratic process remain free from undue external influences. That the BJP has chosen a first time legislature to lead the city of Delhi shows the party has taken a calculated risk. The promise is that Delhi will become a world class city, but as the new Chief Minister Rekha Gupta has a task cut out, she is said to be sincere and should fulfill all the promises made to the people in terms of infrastructure, basic necessities, and even health and education. There must be a focus on the industrial development of Delhi. The days ahead must be seen an end to false promises. Talent shortage, global challenge, India's opportunity. The global labor market does not seem to be future ready. No one has crystal ball to tell the future exactly, but it can be safely said that the skills needed in 2030 will be quite different from what we have today. This is a challenge for the entire world and an opportunity for India. A recent FICCI KPMG study, Global Mobility of Indian Workforce, has estimated that by 2030 the demand for skilled workers will exceed the supply, leading to a talent shortage of 85.2 million people. This global shortage could result in estimated 8.45 trillion in unrealized annual revenue by 2030, equivalent to the combined GDPs of Germany and Japan. Addressing this challenge requires targeted strategies, international cooperation, and proactive policy interventions to optimize the workforce mobility and the economic productivity at the national level. The need of the hour is properly coordinated effort among government, private sector, and other stakeholders. The Gulf Cooperation Council, Europe, including the United Kingdom and Australia, emerged as three key geographies where the workforce mobility will be critical. The talent shortage will neither be uniform across all regions nor follow similar patterns. Each of these regions faces specific workforce demands, however, healthcare will be common requirement across all three regions with aging populations and increasing healthcare needs driving demand. In general, services will be prevalent in three geographies. Manufacturing and constructions are pivotal for the GCC and Australia, while Europe, being the oldest post-industrial society, will require more service sector workers. Besides that, there are emerging sectors, as in the study across all these sectors there is a demand growing towards skill pertaining to automation, AI, big data, predictive analytics, IoT, blockchain management, resource efficiency, and sustainability. There are several barriers that obstruct the efficient movement of skilled workers across borders. Some of these are regulatory and immigration barriers. Complex visa processes and stringent work permit regulations hinder skilled migration, and the recruitment malpractices and trafficking, exploitative recruitment practices, and human trafficking that pose serious threats to migrant workers' safety and rights. In his recent visit to United States, Prime Minister Narendra Modi highlighted this menace and underlined the need to fight it. Other obstructions include policy barriers and skill mismatches. Many Indian degrees, particularly in medicine, are not recognized everywhere in Europe, leading to underemployment or unemployment of qualified professionals, and language and cultural barriers, integration challenges, including language proficiency and cultural adaptation. The Government of India has limited various programs to address the challenges. These include bilateral agreements and free trade agreements. India has several agreements with the GCC nations to protect the rights of Indian workers. For instance, the joint India-United Arab Emirates vision recognizes the importance of skill cooperation between the two nations. Some other notable initiatives that are skill development programs to align worker skill with global market needs and digital platforms for workforce support. To capitalize the global demand for skilled labor, several strategic measures should be prioritized, which include sector-specific skill training. Workforce training should be aligned with the needs of target geographies, and preparation must be made for emerging sectors. Regulation of recruitment practices. Authorities must implement stricter oversight over on recruitment agencies to prevent exploitation and trafficking. Recognition of qualifications. International collaborations must focus on mutual recognition of academic and professional qualifications to ease workforce integration. Incentivizing public-private partnerships. Government at the center and in state should encourage private sector involvement in training programs and global employment facilitation, and promoting circular migration and mobility. Temporary work visas and rotational workforce models can address labor shortages without causing demographic imbalances. The political climate regarding immigration policies is ever changing. While Europe may tighten its regulation, Australia remains more open to skilled migration. In FICCI KPMG study, the Indian diaspora is second largest and fastest growing diaspora in Australia. India's advantage at any rate strict implementation policies target illegal migration. India must remain resilient in its efforts to position its skilled workforce globally, undeterred by shifting political rhetoric. A major advantage for Indian workers is the absence of significant hostility towards them and towards India in most global markets. Even in countries with growing anti-immigration sentiments, skilled Indian workers continue to find opportunities. However, to maintain and enhance this position, the Indian government must take measures to curb illegal migration. Preventing illegal migration will not only protect Indian workers from exploitative agents, but also enhance India's global reputation as a reliable supplier of skilled labor. This will also help us realize the dream of becoming Viksit Bharat. The chairman of the 16th Finance Commission, Arvind Panagaria, recently projected that India's GDP could reach between 6.5 trillion to 9 trillion dollar by 2030. India's ability to move closer to 9 trillion dollar mark will directly be linked to how much estimated 8.4 trillion dollars is unrealized Global potential it can tap into. Talent shortage of 85.2 million people. Global shortage could result in an estimated $8.45 trillion in unrealized annual revenue by 2030. Indian industry needs innovation, not mindless toil. A few months ago, this writer and his colleagues interviewed migrant industrial workers in Ludhiana, Punjab, in a research project. The respondents worked in factories producing garments, auto components, and other products for 11 or 12 hours a day. When orders were high, they worked for days on end without break. Away from the shop floor, their waking hours were spent almost entirely on cooking and in their daily commute. It is puzzling that some of the well known corporate leaders in the country have been urging Indians to work long hours. They may not be aware that the most Indian workers are informal and must work extremely long hours, sweating to earn a living, workers or household helpers. In 23-24, PLFS showed that 21% of India's workers were in regular jobs with a salary, while rest were casual workers or self-employed. Even within the category of regular workers, approximately half of them had to face informal working conditions. They did not have a written job contract and were not eligible for a paid leave and did not receive any social security benefit. By publicly expressing their preference for having long working hours, industry bosses have inadvertently confirmed a well-known yet much discussed fact: Indian industry continues to derive its competitive advantage mainly from cheap labor rather than technology and innovation. Indian industry continues to derive its competitive advantage mainly from cheap labor rather than industry and innovation. In a developed world, the mode of surplus extraction underwent transformation long ago. From making workers labor long hours to employing them more efficiently with superior technologies and management practices based on worker conditions during the Industrial Revolution in Britain, Marx wrote in its Wherewithal hunger of surplus labor, capital oversteps even the merely physical maximum bounds of the working day. It steals the time required for the consumption of fresh air and sunlight. It haggles over a meal time. However, working conditions in Britain improved following regulations brought by the labor union pressures and sweeping economic and technological changes. Today, workers in rich economies put in fewer hours and have significantly higher productivity than those in developing countries. According to data by the ILO, an employee's average weekly work hours was 38 hours in the United States and 36 hours in Japan. India's capitalists have deployed one strategy after another to ensure that they have their disposal at a large labor force willing to work long hours. Big businesses have abetted structural shift in the industry from an organized sector, which is governed by regulations of wage and working conditions, to organized sector. At any time in a crowded industrial area in Coimbatore or Ludhiana, one hears the sounds of several hundreds of machines. Each set produces a small part or a component that feeds into a production or network coordinated by more prominent firms to manufacture a product, including pumps. The relations between the small and large firms in India have not only mutually enriching of the kind that prospered in Japan, but instead have been and beefling the small firms even more. Indian factories are increasingly dependent on workers who are employed through contractors rather than who directly employ. Of all workers who joined India's factory sector after 2011-12, 56% are contract workers. These workers who are not protected by labor regulations are paid much lower wages. The low wages migrant workers receive manifest their multiple disadvantages on account of their social position and lack of the ownership of assets and access to social security benefits. As wages have been pushed downward, profits have soared, especially after the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic in India's factory sector. Profit as a share of value added was 31.6% in 2019-20, but shot upward to 46.4%. However, with its over-reliance on cheap labor for growth, Indian industry has been shooting itself in the foot, hindering its forward movement in the long run, especially globally. In case India's garment industry experience, one expects labor surplus industry to outshine the countries in the low wage industry. However, India's share of the worldwide exports of garment have remained stagnant at 33.1% over the last 2 decades. China, Bangladesh, and Vietnam have considerably outperformed in the garment industry. Main barrier to progress for India is the reluctance shown by capitalists to modernize firms. They lack the ambition to go beyond limited advantages that low wages offer them and niche segments of export markets in the garment industry. The easy availability of labor has lulled Indian industry into a stupor, closing its eyes to wider opportunities and gapping need for technological and managerial changes. This has undermined growth in all fields, including new generation ones such as IT. Low wages, long working hours have reduced purchasing capabilities of the working classes, stretching the limits of the working day, allowing little time for recuperation for the tired minds and bodies, and having all these driven by greed for profits is unconscionable. USAID funded 7 projects in India in FY24. Finance Ministry says US agency funded $750 million related to agriculture, food security, water, sanitation, hygiene, health and renewable energy. Army chief begins 5-day France visit to bolster military ties. Sanjay Raut slams Marathi Literary Committee for using event for political purposes. Sambal administration 300 cameras, 127 locations. UNESCO Heritage Tag sought for Shivaji's fort. Jai Shankar, 45 ambassadors interact with Tamil delegates at the Kashi Tamil Sangamam. Cookie spokesperson removed from the DU Literature Fest panel. Salian Haukip, spokesperson of the Kuki National Organization, was removed from a panel at the Delhi University Literary Festival that has been invited on Sunday. Some leaders and foreign powers are marking religion, says Modi. Congress to hold session in Ahmedabad to discuss its future plan. Women achievers to take charge of PM's social media accounts for a day. In Man Ki Baat, PM says achievers will share their insights on his social media account to mark International Women's Day. He also praises ISRO's recent feats, underscores the importance of AI and countries' growth on the field. Days after Delhi got its fourth women chief minister, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in his monthly Man Ki Baat radio address, highlighted the contribution of women across all sectors. He said on International Women's Day, March 8, he would hand over his social media accounts to women achievers who would share their insights with fellow Indians. Mr. Modi said Women's Day was a special occasion to salute our Nari Shakti. In our culture, respect our daughters have been paramount. The Matri Shakti, motherly energy of the country, has also played a big role in our freedom struggle. I am sharing all with you what Hansa Mehtaji has said. While presenting our national flag in the Constituent Assembly in her own voice, he said before an audio clip of the freedom fighter Hansa Mehta was played. Hansa Mehta brought to the fore the contribution of women from all over the country, right from making a national flag to sacrificing their lives for its sake. She was She was one of the belief that saffron color in our tricolor also reflects this sentiment. She has expressed confidence that our women power would make it valuable contribution for a small, strong and prosperous India. Prime Minister said on the occasion of Women's Day, he would hand over social media accounts such as those X and Instagram to women who had achieved success in myriad fields, who had innovated and created unique identity for themselves in various fields. If you want to avail yourself of this opportunity, become a part of this experiment through the special forum created on Namo app and share your message with the whole world. Mr. Modi talked about growing opportunities for the youth and country's special achievements in the space sector. He said over the past 10 years alone, over 460 satellites, including those of other countries, were launched. Another important aspect witnessed in recent years was that of participation of women was constantly on the rise among those of space scientists. Underscoring the importance of AI, Mr. Modi spoke out about his recent visit to Paris to participate in AI conference. There, the world praised India's progress in this sector. We are also getting to see examples of how people of the country are using AI today. Mr. Modi talked about recently concluded national games in Uttarakhand, which saw participation of over 11,000 athletes. The number of teenage champions in this year's national games is astounding. 15-year-old shooter Gavin Anthony, 16-year-old hammer thrower Anushka Yadav, and 19-year-old pole vaulter Dev Kumar Meena from Madhya Pradesh have proved that India's sporting future lies in the hands of very talented generation. Many animals are also observed as vehicles of our gods and goddesses. I would like to thank my tribal brothers and sisters because they actively participate in work related to wildlife protection. About the ongoing board examination, Mr. Modi wished the students well and asked them to appear for papers without any stress and with positive spirit. Over 62 crore devotees took holy dip at Mahakumbh. On Sundays at 62 crore had come to Mahakumbh so far, or about 120 crore Sanatan Dham followers in the world. Half of them have already taken holy dip. American Airlines flight to New Delhi diverted to Rome, India to host a conference on women peacekeepers. Health Ministry bans export of drugs containing tarpentadol, carisoprodol. XR Creator Hackathon throws open opportunities for Myrad aspirants. Why personal accident insurance is a lifeline. Sudan's RSF allies signed charter to establish a parallel government. Pope Francis in critical condition. Trump to avoid new FBI chief Kash Patel as acting ATF director. Pak to deport Afghan refugees if US resettlement not approved. Tens of thousands of mourners poured in for Nasrullah's funeral. Hezbollah maintains strong support for base with Lebanon Shia community by providing social and economic services. Russia launches largest drone attack on Ukraine, Zelensky. Bangladesh to mark February 25 as Military Martyrdom Day. Russia signs memorandum to build port in Myanmar. Israel ramps up West Bank offensive, says truce to remain in some areas for a year. First detailed map of Moon's south pole made from Chandrayaan data. Researchers from PRL created a map using data from the Pragyan rover. Condensed matter physics is one of the most active branches. Simply speaking, scientists in the field study the properties and behavior of solid and liquid matter. Not so simply speaking, scientists here are interested in the behavior of large collection of particles that are strongly interacting with each other. Because of its size and scopes, condensed matter physics has numerous subcategories. For example, the branch of electronic condensed matter is concerned with how electrons behave in solid and liquids. Research on semiconductors would belong here. Likewise, magnetic condensed matter studies different kinds of magnets and magnetism. Soft condensed matter physics studies objects that are easily deformed but not broken. Like biological tissue, nanoscience studies very small objects that can display both classical and quantum physics. Rescue team yet to contact workers trapped in tunnel. Trump attacks US aid again over India grant amid doubts over Doge charge. So that's all for today. See you in the next one.